Hey everybody, welcome to Life for Your Soul. Have you ever been in a situation where you're super frustrated with your circumstances, maybe a coworker, and you wish that they would just change? Have you been frustrated talking to somebody, hoping that they'd be on your level and they're not? We are going to talk about all that and a lot more in this episode, so don't go anywhere. It's starting right now.
Have you been feeling stuck, limited, or blocked in your spiritual life?
Are you looking for breakthrough today?
We are here creating a safe place to uncover real answers to honest questions.
Because this is not just another self-help podcast. This is
Life for Your Soul.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back.
How to do? Welcome to the show.
We are here with our Rhema episode.
Yes, we get to chit-chat about whatever it is that the Lord wants us to chit-chat with you about, regardless of anything we've been doing or talking about. I love a Rhema. Nice and cash.
Yeah, and with Rhemas, we try to pack it all into one episode. So we'll see how good we can pull that off. And it's also, for the Rhemas, it's a little bit looser construction. It's a little bit more, like, what are we just thinking about and processing right now?
For sure. Definitely more conversational. Just working through it, yeah.
So, as we were planning out this episode, I was talking to Virginia, and what I think I want to title this episode is Dealing with Unholy Frustration.
That's good.
Or we could say, frustration is not a fruit of the Spirit.
That's good, too. Rachel's just, like, slinging the titles out. I love it.
But before we get started, I'm Rachel.
I'm Virginia.
That's Virginia. In case this is your very first time looking at this episode and seeing us. And if you like this content, like and subscribe.
That would be
like
great.
Button really helps.
Drop a comment.
I'm
new.
You could do that right now. It'd be great. Or you can wait to the very end and like it just to prove your point that we did a good job. But either way, we appreciate any and all of your support. But getting into the topic here, I realized that some of the most intelligent people I know are some of the most frustrated people I know. Mm. And there seems to go hand in hand with when you are confident in your abilities, confident in your knowledge, confident in where you are and what you're doing, your intelligence, it's very easy to distance yourself from the unwashed masses.
Wow.
Virginia, do you have that Bible verse up in Proverbs?
Yes, I do. Proverbs 21:2 says, "People may be right in their own eyes, but the Lord examines their heart."
Yeah.
There's a lot of people being rightness in their own eyes, just walking around on two legs everywhere. There's a lot of it.
And so we're making the point, or trying to present the argument that part of why you're frustrated is because of that I'm right in my own eyes concept. One other verse we'll pull in before we get into this discussion is Matthew chapter 7. I'll start with verse 1. It says, "Do not judge others, and you will not be judged, for you will be treated as you treat others. The standard you use in judging is the standard by which you will be judged. And why worry about a speck in your friend's eye when you have a log in your own? How can you think of saying to your friend, 'Let me help you get rid of that speck in your eye,' when you can't see past the log in your own eye? Hypocrite! First get rid of the log in your own eye, then you will see well enough to deal with the speck in your friend's eye."
Very good.
So
basically, you need to clean yourself up before you go and try and help some people when you're being all judgy McJudgy.
Yeah, and my favorite phrase of the decade is check yourself before you wreck yourself. Whoever came up with that is my hero, because it just, one phrase, you've encompassed so much meaning.
So much. Well, the thing I love about that verse in Proverbs is that there are so many people who feel like, well, I'm trying to help so-and-so because they clearly need my guidance or whatever the thing is, right? And it leads to their frustration. But at the same time, it's like your motive behind doing that, it's not like it was a pure motive. You were trying to ease your own frustration or discomfort or annoyance or whatever the thing was. And so I love that of like, well, the Lord, he can see your heart. He judges our motives, our intentions. So.
And I'll put the address on the screen because I don't have it right now, but there is the Bible verse that says that love covers over a multitude of sins. And it's easy. Well, we talk a lot about pride, and Virginia loves talking about how pride is basically the source
the downfall
for so many
of all
things.
humanity.
Yeah. Now, as an example, talking about a log and a speck in your friend's eye. Okay, well, Jesus talking metaphorically, because obviously having a big splinter in your eye, you're not going to be sitting there. You would feel, you'd feel the splinter in your eye. So like, if there's a log in your eye, you should be able to feel it. So you'd be so worried about that you wouldn't be looking in your friend's eye for a speck. So it's obviously metaphorical, but he's talking about the heart. He's talking about things that are invisible. And, for example, if you knew anyone in the disabled community, let's say someone who cannot walk or maybe they have an amputee and they have no legs, or something where they're incapable of doing something, you would look at them and immediately be able to ascertain, oh, wait, they don't have legs or they don't have the capability. They're in a wheelchair. You would not walk up to that person and go, why aren't you walking? Do you want to go on a run with me? And they'd be like, no, I wouldn't. And they'd look at you like, what are you,
Yeah.
you crazy.
Because it's so apparent.
Yeah, so apparent. It's in your face. What we realize now, though, is that inside, in our soul, our mind, our will, our emotions, we can have disabilities in those places. We can have disabled, broken down, traumatized, triggered areas in our lives that are not immediately visible. Mm-hmm. And when you're dealing with other people, you actually can't see it until it shows itself.
Right.
So, you can't get frustrated at someone who's emotionally stunted simply because they're disabled in that area. Right?
Yeah. And I know we're going to get into this, later, but there's a huge aspect of what Rachel just said that has to come down to your expectations and what your expectations are with the people that you interact with, and how much grace you extend to those people. So just keep that in mind as we continue on.
Now, I did want to talk about spiritual blindness, spiritual deafness. The Bible talks about a lot of times that quote, he who has ears, let him hear.
Yep.
Talking about, they're blind in their heart. They can't see. If they could see and hear, they would turn. I would heal them. Like Jesus said that quote. There's a component of, if you cannot hear, so just like in the natural, if I'm blind in my eyes and deaf in my ears, I cannot see and I cannot hear. There's just nothing I can do about it. Like, you could put the expectation on me. I could even try with all my might. I am not going to be able to see or hear if I'm blind or deaf. Just straight out. Well, it's like that in the spirit and in the soul. So if there is an area in your soul, in your mind, will, and emotions, anywhere where you are spiritually blinded or deaf to something, and I'm making the argument that people could be at various levels. Like maybe they can see, but they can't hear. Maybe they can see 50%. And hear 50%. So in anywhere in your life, you can have various degrees of blindness or deafness. And that's why it's so hidden. Like it's not predictable. You can't just look at someone and say, you're an equation and 2 + 2 = 4. Right.
Yeah.
Like you can't look at them like that because there could be some areas in their life where they are 100% vision. They're clear vision, clear hearing. You can work with them. You can talk to them. They receive from the Lord and everything is just peachy. And then there's another area in their life where they're seeing at 10% and can't hear nothing. Mm-hmm. And when you interact with that part of them, you get supremely frustrated because you're like, oh, well, you could see and hear just clearly over there, but now I'm interacting with you and you can't hear. And this goes back to what Virginia was saying about expectations.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, like, in today's culture, it's becoming so much more apparent of like, there's messages that go out of like, hey, you never know what someone's dealing with. You don't know, there's invisible wounds that people have. And so I feel like in certain circles, there's more grace that's just automatically extended when you're dealing with people. But particularly in the church, it's like, no, we all are supposed to be mature. We are all supposed to be operating on this level. And there is way more of a disparity here between those
We
things.
are all Superman. Or we're supposed to be Superman, you know?
Right.
And I think part of it comes from an orphan mindset of a victimized orphan mindset of, I am been hurt. I've been traumatized. So the rest of the world owes me to treat me correctly. And in the church, because you're around other Christians and believers, you're like, well, I'm surrounded by supermen and superwomen. They should always love me perfectly because the Bible says to. So I should expect that every Christian I interact with should be like, yes, I'm totally supportive of you. I love you. I hear you. I'll pray for you. It's going to be great. And the reality is we're dealing with broken people. And that's not how it plays out. Yeah. And it's frustrating because it's frustrating for immature people who are reaching out to the people around them, hoping for maturity to be manifested.
Right.
And then you have mature people who are frustrated dealing with immature people because you're like, why can't you just get it? Why aren't you there yet? Why? Why must I put up with you? Jesus. So I was thinking about this. I was like, think about it.
That's a good verse.
Jesus came down. Can you imagine Jesus going the entire time whining and going, ugh, humanity. Ugh, why did I do this? Ugh, I can't stand them. They're so needy. They're so whiny.
Jesus looking up at God. Abba, really? These people?
Really?
Them?
Really, God? Really? And what was interesting is he did get mad at the Pharisees. He did get frustrated with the disciples, but he was like, have I not done that? Like, have I not been with you long enough? Haven't you guys starting to get this yet? But just because they were with him did not mean that their ears were fully open and their eyes were open. So when Jesus said, he who has ears, let him hear, he said that a lot when he was teaching. He's like, hear and have ears and hear. And the disciples, until Jesus died and rose again, they didn't even have fully equipped ears and eyes.
Yeah.
So like Philip asked Jesus, he's like, Jesus, will you just show us the Father, please? We want to see the Father. And Jesus is like, Philip, have I not been with you this whole time? I have been the perfect image of the Father. If you've seen me, you've seen the Father. Like,
yeah.
You've been seeing him this entire time. When, Jesus said, who do they say I am? And the disciples said, some say Elijah, some say, John the Baptist or whatever. I don't remember what the thing. Some say this, some say that. And then Peter goes, well, you're the Messiah. And Jesus said, hey, man did not reveal this to you, but God did. That's because Jesus didn't run around going, I am the Messiah. Everybody, just wanted to let you know, hey, I'm the Messiah. He didn't do that. In fact, he kept it under wraps on purpose. Like for most of his time, he actually didn't tell people. He would tell that when the demons popped up and said, you're the Son of God, he'd be like, shut up. And they're like, we know who you are. He's like,
yeah. I mean, he talked to a lot of people about don't say anything, don't do anything, just shush about who did this to you.
Yep.
Yeah.
And so you have this dynamic that if Jesus would have been, if anyone in all of history would have the entitlement to be supremely frustrated all the time, it would be him.
Yeah.
And yet we know that wasn't him. Right? And so what I want to really get into this is like, you need to isolate, think about, and reflect on why you feel entitled to be frustrated.
Entitled to be frustrated.
Why do you feel entitled? Why is it okay for you to be like, oh, I'm so mad at this person, or I'm so frustrated with this organization, or my boss, or my coworker, or my kid, like they just never listen, like, or my friends, like, Anywhere in your life where you're frustrated, just frustrated with your circumstances, like, oh my, I just wish my circumstances were different, like, if only, and frustration not being a fruit of the Spirit, it's just one of those things that slide under the radar. Like, I just feel like, even me personally, up until relatively recently, like, you just let yourself be frustrated because you just assume it's okay. It's kind of like complaining, but like, complaining to a fault is like being whiny, and usually people will like, you're being whiny right now. And so you might check yourself and be like, yeah, okay, let me not complain too much because people won't like me or they'll be irritated me. But there's something about frustration that's like groupthink. Like, I'm frustrated, and then someone goes, you know what? I'm frustrated too. Let's just like wallow in our frustration. It could even not even be for the same reason. It could just be like, yeah, I'm frustrated about this in my life. And you're like, yeah, I'm frustrated about this in my life. It's so frustrated. And
well, I think a piece of it that's about frustration that is interesting is that, like you were just saying about, you know, people, if they do it to a point, then it's like, okay, now you've crossed over to whiny and people will call you out on being whiny. Well, the frustration, there is an aspect of it where you're like, okay, maybe you want to express your frustration to somebody. But ultimately, staying in frustration is really being problem focused and not solution focused. So whatever's going on in your life, if you just stay in that place of frustration, it's like, okay, well, how long are you just going to sit here and be mad at the problem? If you had something happen to you and you were frustrated and you went into solution mode, if that was like your default of like, okay, this frustration point is just a thing that has happened, what's the solution? What can we do to fix it? And sure, there might be some complexities to that. And you're like, man, I don't even like that I have to come up with the solution right now because this shouldn't be a problem. Again, that's going back into that negative thought process and think where it's like, okay, but you're staying focused on the problem and not moving past it. And especially when you're talking about, Rachel, about people having an expectation of like, I'm so mature and you're not. And so you're frustrating me with your thing. It's like, well, you staying in frustration is actually not a sign of maturity because you're not even moving past the problem.
Okay, so we'll delineate two things. You can feel frustrated if you're under a lot of pressure. Like, let's say there's pressure building in your life. That's different. That's a weight on you that's grating on you. It's kind of like if I were to stand next to Virginia and just scream in her ear while she's trying to get her work done. But like, right? Like, it would just be an external pressure of annoyance that just like, if she got frustrated at me, it's valid. So I'm not saying that there isn't this
like you're never allowed to be frustrated.
Yes, there are things that are frustrating. I get it. But usually those are not a moral attachment. Like, we're not talking about character in that moment. Like, we're talking about like, okay, something overwhelming, something that's hard to deal with, something that's new, something that's a problem you've never encountered before. That kind of frustration is fine, because most of the time when you have that frustration, it's almost like that kind of pressure is a good kind of pressure or frustration because it gets you moving. Like Virginia said, it gets you into problem solving mode. It's like Virginia and I were talking about times and shifting in your life, and how if you look at a 5-speed car, I know a lot of people 6-speed cars, they don't, where you have to manually gear shift. I know that's not a thing anymore for most people, but when I was a teenager, I learned on a car where I would have to manually shift gears. If you're on a motorcycle, you have to do the same thing. So what happens is your REMs get so high. So like if you're in first gear, you know, you can go in first gear depending on the vehicle and its capabilities. Like, let's just say first gear is 10 miles per hour, right? So you increase your speed, you get to 10 miles per hour, and the REM gets so high and your engine is frustrated. Your engine's going, like, you know, like it's geared up to where you cannot push past. There's a limit there. You cannot push past that gear until you drop into the next gear. Then that process starts again. You get, okay, 20 to 30 miles an hour. So you increase your speed 20 to 30, and it's going, gets to 30. Your REMs get too high, and you're like, and you have to drop another gear. So your automatic cars, they do this for you automatically. Hence the term automatic.
Hence why they're called automatic.
And so all you youngins don't have the the joy of knowing what it is to flood your engine and or to not gear shift properly and all the things. It's a hot mess. So I think spiritually, when you're dealing with frustration that has to do with shifting in your life, okay? That's different. So shifting frustration is good. Once you get, when that pressure starts increasing and you realize, oh man, I'm so frustrated. Like this is pushing that just like in a car
Friction.
with that noise is alert, you need to change gears. So when you feel that frustration and that pressure, that's God saying, okay, what you've been doing, the speed you've been going, the things you've been doing at this time are no longer working.
Yeah.
The pressure has gotten to the point where you literally have to change what you're doing to handle it. So that kind of pressure change is good. You're supposed to get frustrated. Like God doesn't let you get comfortable in places that you need to get out of because He's like,
it's like when when you outgrow the place that you're living, right? Right before you move, it's like all you can pay attention to is the walls coming in at you.
Yeah. Or yeah, exactly. Like, yeah, when you're like, or when you're changing jobs, like there's been so many times where
oh man,
God was moving me from one season to the next and I was leaving one job to another. And there's this time period where God, the grace, you never notice the grace of God so much as when you're in transition, because what He does is He lifts the grace to get you uncomfortable. And then you're like, ugh, right? To get you out. But then when you come back, it's like it increases again. So it's like it lifts slightly, then you get into the new position and then it drops it. Like,
yeah.
But the reason why He does that is because we don't deal with change very well. We don't like change. We don't like to be stretched. We don't like to have to shift or move. And we have to, at that point, really trust God. So it's those moments of transition and gear shifting that you have to press. We say press in, it's very Christianese. But anyway, you lean in to God's grace, because that's when you get pulled beyond your natural ability. So from one to the next, you're going beyond your natural ability, pressing into what God's supernatural ability is, and then He drops you into the next season, and then you have a kind of smooth sailing for a while until it's time to shift again. So that's that kind of frustration, and that's how you should handle it. Like, it's okay to feel overwhelmed and frustrated and ask for help, but really what God is doing is like, no, because people can't help you out of your frustration. And I think when we go to people and we go, fix my frustration for me.
That's good. Because it's like asking them to live your life for you.
They can sympathize. I have counseled a lot of people where I go, I sympathize. I know how it feels. They're there.
It's hard because people, especially if you haven't gone through a lot of these transition processes in your life, you kind of do expect someone to do it for you. Like, you expect there to be some kind of thing that's like, can't this just be smoothed out? Like, I remember talking to someone and I'm like, this is literally a choice that you have to make. Like, you have to decide that I'm going to do this thing that God wants me to do. We are going to go the direction that God wants to go, because, just like Rachel said, you can't have anyone do it for you. And as that grace is lifting and you're going into that transition process, like, you're the only one who's been graced to do that for you. Like, you have to do it.
Yeah. And honestly, the grace lifting, I've just seen it over and over and over again in my life, because it's God stretching us. It's like, oh, will you still love me? Will you still obey me? Will you still do the right thing even when it's not as easy? Even when you have a little less grease in your wheels, and stuff is starting to stick. And it's in those moments that you can be a living sacrifice and go, yeah, God, I'm trusting you in this process. And you grow. Like, that's how you grow. And you can't, like Virginia said, you can't grow for other people. And a lot of times people come to you and you're like, yeah, just keep going, keep doing it. Trust God, pray, do those things, because it's not going to change until you change.
Yeah.
And I think there's a lot of time where people are like, talking about fasting. Like a lot of times you hear people in church and stuff talking about, well, this is a time where you need to fast. You know, you need to do X, Y, and Z. It's partly because you're disciplining yourself into a new season.
Oh, that's
because
good.
you realize, okay, my 5 minutes a day with the Lord and the Bible is not cutting it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you realize, oh, well, the increased demand on my life means I need to get up earlier and spend an hour with God, or I need to spend more time in prayer, or I need to get together with my church more and focus on godly things. Like there's always going to be something that's going to have to require a shift. To get out of a position, even with weight loss, like diets work the first time because it's such a shock, and then every time you repeat something, your body's like, "Hey, I know what we're doing. I know what we're doing. I've seen this before," and then your body's like, "Nah, I ain't doing it." And so you have these frustration points because you have to shift. So that's the one point of frustration. I think we covered that. But back to, we're going to do a rapid leap back to what we were talking about, frustration with other people. So one type of frustration I was saying was it's not toxic, it's just is, and you got to work through it. This kind of frustration that you have with people that you feel entitled to is toxic. Because, like Virginia said earlier, it's not a solution-based mindset. And what I'm trying to say is that there's a bit of pride and entitlement that comes in that keeps you in the mindset that it's okay. It's okay that I'm so frustrated.
Yeah, I was just going to say that. It's a selfish mindset, too. It's very self-focused.
Yeah, like I'm entitled to, I've been victimized, I've been hurt, I've been ignored, I've been discounted, I've been, the litany of things.
Yeah.
They should know better. You know, they should be more mature. You know, they're in a position of leadership, whether you're boss or any other kind of thing. You know, they should be the more mature person. They should be handling this better. They should be more emotionally stable. Like whatever it is. I have a parent. They should love me because parents are supposed to love their kids. Well, you might have a parent who doesn't love their kid. Unfortunately, that happens. You would think it wouldn't, but it does. So, like, you have all these expectations of the shoulda, coulda, wouldas because life is not fair. We'll just say that. Sorry if you guys hadn't figured that out yet.
Apologies.
I'm crashing your party right now. Crushing your dreams. Life is not fair. People are not healed. People are not perfect. And you're going to be in a place with even your most beloved people that are closest to you, whether your spouse, your kids, your best friend, they're still going to fall short. For all fall short of the glory of God.
That's right.
For all have sinned.
We have all sinned and fallen short.
And the danger here, and like I said, intelligent people have a really hard time with this. Like, because, you know, it's like if you have somebody who knows advanced math and, my friend Amy, she's great at advanced math and calculations because she does sound engineering and I struggle with 2 + 2. I have to think about the 2 + 2 = 4. And she just laughs at me because I'm like, I can't do math in my head. I mean, we're talking about simple, stupid stuff. And then she's just like looking at me like, how? Because she's so good at it, right? And I'm like, I don't know how. I really don't know why I'm so deficient in this area.
Which I find funny, especially since you've spent so many years in retail, because typically people who work in retail are pretty decent at doing math in their head.
If I practice and it's regular, I can do simple math and multiplication and percentages and stuff. But like, if I don't do math, it is just gone. I mean, out the window. I see my pull up my fingers and toes. It's like that bad for me. So you could say in that area, I'm very blind and deaf in math, whereas someone who's a mathematician, so you put a mathematician next to me and they're just gonna be frustrated, right? They would have to like lower their standards of interaction with me. They'd be like, instead of going, what's 5,000 times 396? They'd be like, okay, let's go back to the basics. Okay, can you tell me what 10 times 10 is? Do you have that? Do you? And I'd be like, yeah, 10 times 10 is 100. Right? I hope that's correct.
It is correct. Good job.
Okay. Right. So, and that's how you got to be with the people around you, because if you find yourself getting frustrated with someone, that is not the heart of God, because God knows every blind spot, every deaf spot in our souls. He can see the heart. Like that verse, it says, every man, like Virginia read at the very beginning, his own heart, but God looks at the heart, like God knows, right? And so God's the only one that can see us perfectly and know our deficiencies in every area and have those calculations.
But also love us anyway.
Yeah.
Because like you were saying, like we're supposed to be growing in all of these things. So in our spiritual gifts, in our maturity, in our everything, we're supposed to be growing in all these things. We're supposed to be growing in our love for one another. So he loves you despite all of your with them and embracing them. Like, that's how I made Rachel, but I love her and I love all the things that she's great at.
And I know, and he also knows how long it's going to take for those areas to be healed and things to be set right.
And the timing, right? Of like when that healing is going to come, or that,
Because I think we've all had moments where things clicked and you're like, oh my gosh, I get it now. Like, mind blown.
Right.
Where before that moment, you just, no matter how hard you tried, you didn't get it. Like, it didn't get it. You weren't going to get it. It was, and God knows how long it takes for those areas. Thing is, when we interact with each other, we have to press into the Spirit and trust that God knows and help us interact with each other lovingly, because, and also when we need to correct, it's like, okay, I'm not going to correct you out of frustration because I'm mad at you. I'm going to go, okay, Holy Spirit, I'm supposed to love this person. How can I adjust what I'm saying so that I can bring it down to a level where they can hear and see it? It's like dogs who can't see full color or whatever, I don't know what animals, there's animals they say see in black and white, right?
Right.
And they don't see the full color spectrum. Well, you put a rainbow in front of them, they're not going to be able to appreciate it. So, like, you have to then present something in black and white. And it's kind of like that. Like, there's going to be times in your life when to interact with your friends, families, your enemies, your frenemies, like bosses, coworkers, jealous people in your life, frustrating people in your life, there's going to be a point where you're going to have to, like, if you normally talk in color, for that person, you're going to have to talk in black and white. Like, you're going to have to adjust your settings.
And the thing is we don't know who these people are, and we don't know what the deficiency is. Just like Rachel said, like, in the same way you wouldn't look at someone in a wheelchair and say, go run, right? We don't know the things that are going on with these people. We don't know where their blind spots are. You have to give grace. And that's, what I mentioned at the beginning of the episode. You have to extend that grace towards people, because regardless of what your expectations may be with that conversation or asking someone for help, like you can't therefore expect everything to function the way you want it to or you need it to, because you don't see these things into this person.
And so a couple Bible references for that too. It's like, well, Jesus said that multiple times when the people came and pulled on him, it said he had compassion. Like, compassion filled his heart. He had compassion for them because they were like sheep without a shepherd. So even though they were all frustrating and thronging and pressing on him, he was like, okay, they can't do any better. They literally can't do any different than what they're doing because of where they're at. And so Jesus met them where they're at. And it's like Apostle Paul, he said, if you have, when talking about the conscience, he's like, if you have a brother who's convinced that eating meat sacrificed to idols is bad, you don't bring them over and serve it to them. Like, if some people say, I shouldn't eat meat at all, well, like I said, if you invite them over, you present them with a vegetarian dish. You don't pull out a ribeye and slap it on their plate, you know?
Despite
And be
how good it is.
You should be, you know, more mature. Eat the dang meat, okay? And then be like, but I'm a vegetarian. You know, like, do you see what I'm saying? Like, that's not love. And that's what Paul was making. He's like, it's not worth it to argue over this stuff. If someone would feel guilty or upset for eating meat, do not force meat on them. It's not a moral thing in the sense that the right or wrong kind of thing. Like, it's not clear.
Right. No, it's
in
brotherly
scripture.
love, right? Like if don't do something that you know is going to cause your brother or your sister to stumble. Like if you can, I don't know, withhold yourself from doing it, then all this thing is coming back to love. We're supposed to be loving each other, and that's not very loving.
It's not. So, like we've said in multiple different episodes, like everything comes back to love. Why? Because the Bible, Jesus, Paul the Apostle, they all bear like, it's love. Love, 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 love. But even, you can even be blinded to love. Like if you are finding yourself frustrated with people, but you think that you are more mature, like Virginia said, reference before, like that's not maturity. So if you are finding yourself in this place of nitpicking, frustration, if they would just change, or it's a very outward focus of, it's kind of falls into the camp, like if I could just change my circumstances, my life would be perfect.
Yeah.
And that's the lie you're buying into when you do this. It's like, okay, if I could just change the circumstances of that person's life, their thinking, their processes, if I could just change them, then my life would be improved. Or the group life would be like the business, the office, whatever. That
Right.
Everyone would be better. And that's outside of your control. And if you're hyper focused on that, which is going back to the verse where it's the speck in your brother's eye and the log in your own, it's like, psychologically speaking, a log in your eye would be very difficult to deal with. Like, it's the things in your life that you don't want to deal with because they're so difficult that you transfer that to somebody else because I guess it's kind of like projecting, but like, you're like, I can't handle it right now. I don't want to deal with it. It's too much. So I'm going to fixate on something that feels important to me, but it's really outside of my control, so that I can feel like I'm doing something, right?
Yeah.
Like if you worry about something and someone who's outside your control and you're just frustrated about it and you're just talking about it and it just is, well then you feel productive because you're running your mouth, things are happening. But
Right.
the solution, like Virginia was saying, it's never solution based because I cannot control them. I cannot change them. Like, that's why for a lot of people, when you're passive aggressive is a problem, because it's like, wait, if you have a problem with a person and you're frustrated with them, the solution answer is go to them and talk to them.
Yeah. Your
But if
passive aggressiveness does not solve any problems.
It's not going to change
It
them.
only makes you more frustrated.
Exactly. So if you find yourself going, well, I don't want to talk to them because they're just not going to listen or whatever. Okay. Then you need to drop it. You have two options because the frustration is not the option. So frustration rises up. You get about a person and you're like, oh, okay, I don't want to confront them. Okay. Well, you are not entitled to stay in your frustration any longer because you've made a decision. The decision is talk to them or don't talk to them. That's the decision. Present your argument to them or not. And they may respond appropriately with or without your input. They might shift or change, whatever. But at that point, when you decide, okay, yes, I'm going to talk to them. Okay, that's a decision. That's a problem solving. No, I'm not going to talk to them. Okay, that's a decision. That's a problem solving. You're like, it's not worth it. It's not important enough. Okay, well then you have to let the frustration go. You have to be like, I
Forgive
cannot
them.
continue in my frustration.
Yeah.
I have to forgive them and I have to actually let it go. If you are stuck in frustration, like it's just like got a hold on you, then you're dealing with something else. That's where it might be good to start declaring stuff over yourself and breaking soul ties and doing things you're like, why am I so stuck in this? Because usually it's deflecting. It's usually you're hyper focusing on something because the real problem is back here in the background and you're not recognizing it. And so you're not addressing the real issue. And that's when you really need to get with the Lord and go, Lord, what is the real issue going on right now?
Yeah.
Because I either made the decision to talk to them or I made the decision not to talk to them. Why do I still feel this roiling frustration? What about the situation do I need to change and shift? And at that point, you go, Lord, open my eyes. Let me see things the way you see. Open my ears. Let me hear things the way you hear. Because at that point, that opens up the opportunity for God to start working on you. And when you can rightfully see and hear, that's when you can get the log out of your own eye.
The thing I love about that verse is, you know, that he's talking about this kind of invisible, unseen thing because of how incredibly sensitive our eyes are. Like, could you imagine if you have a singular grain of sand or dirt in your eye, you can't think about anything else until it's gone.
Yep.
So the fact that you would have a speck, let alone a log, it's like, you know, he's talking about, I mean, just to further emphasize, like, this is biblical. Like, look at your own eyes. Put anything in them. It will be horribly torturous until you get that thing out of there.
And if you think about it, the reason why if a log is in your eye, we'll say it's a large splinter, it could be a log, whatever size, just obtrusive enough, you won't be able to see out of that eye. The eye is blinded. Mm-hmm. So you're already addressing your brother with half vision.
Come on.
You're
That's
not
good.
seeing them rightly.
That's good.
So that's another reason why you have to get the log out of your own eye, because then you can see people properly. And that's part of the problem. If you're not dealing with your own blindness and not asking the Lord to give you eyes to see and ears to hear, you're every time you analyze something and look at something and address something in someone else's life, for whatever reason, maybe your proximity, maybe you're part of their life, maybe you just feel entitled to their life, maybe you're discipling them, maybe you're a parent, whatever, you're not going to see them rightly because just the fact that you feel like it's your job to get the speck out of their eye.
Yeah, that's good.
You know,
That's really good.
It's what someone would do is go, yo, man, there's something in your eye. And then they go, oh, really? Oh, let me go in the mirror. And they pull it out. You're not digging the speck out of their eye. You're not going like, come here, honey. And like, maybe for a baby you would do that because they're incapable, but anyone with any level of maturity, you're not going to sit there and pry it out of their eye.
Yeah.
Like, you're going to go, hey, yo, there's something in your eye, man. And that's in love. Like, I just care about you, and there's something irritating your eye, and it's looking all red and pussy. And they'd be like, oh, okay, really? Okay, where? Because it's an act of love. It's not an act of judgment. If somebody's looking at you, and your all eyes weeping and pussy with the things again, they're like, what are you doing? Why are you coming to me? Get your eye needs fixed. Like, it's all a matter of perspective and ratios and levels. So, like, it doesn't matter if you are the most mature and have the most revelation, like
I was about to say this.
Corinthians 13.
Yeah.
You could speak all the mysteries and speak heavenly language and the angels' language and give your body to be burned. But if you don't have love, it's worthless.
Yeah.
So all your observations, all your nitpicking, all your critiquing, all your discernment, all of it.
Oh, yeah. Come on.
For the other person is completely useless and fruitless if there's no love in it.
Yeah.
And then you cannot possibly love them rightly if you are not letting God love you and clean yourself up and let God take the stuff out of your eyes and give you sight and hearing so that you can help them. And also the love is bringing yourself to that person's level. Like, you wouldn't take a person who is, let's say a child, right? You have a child who's like 3 years old. You don't address a child like you would, you know, an auditorium of people when you're giving a
lecture,
speech or a lecture. Like, you don't talk to them. It will not translate. It does not go there. So whenever you isolate a person and realize, oh, there's a maturity issue in this area, or there's a blindness issue in this area, I can't talk to them normally. I have to adjust. It's very prideful and selfish to be like, well, I'm just going to continue talking like the orator I am. And if they just don't get it, they just don't get it. We're talking about a 3-year-old. They're not
I
going to
can't
get
even
it.
tell you how much I just am in awe of my children's teachers, because all of my kids are in 3rd grade or under, and they do something. And as the parent, like back to school night, for example, I don't know, we're in the classroom together. They do something that for me as a parent, I'm like, okay, I need to correct them. I need to whatever. And the teachers, like, they just don't miss a beat. They know exactly how to speak to that kid. They know exactly what level they're on. They know why to let this thing go. And I'm going to ignore that behavior entirely. And I know to pay attention to this. And it's like, teach me your ways. Like, how do you...
But they know what they're dealing with. They're
Right.
quickly able to identify, I am a 3rd grade teacher. I am an expert in 3rd graders.
Yes, I know
speak
exactly
3rd
how to
grade.
deal with like 7 and 8-year-olds. Okay, this is my focus.
Okay,
Right.
so when you're dealing with, so we'll close up here, but like when you're dealing with other people, ask Holy Spirit to give you spiritual eyes and spiritual ears to hear where that person is in their soul and their mind, their will, their emotions.
That's good.
To be recognize where they're triggered, to recognize where they're deficient, and then ask Holy Spirit to, with love, show you how to speak to them in a way that they'll receive. Because if the message, it's like those people who go around with signs saying you're to people who are sinners or not saved. They're like, you're burning in hell. You're going to go burn in hell. You're evil. You're wicked. You're going to burn in hell. It's like, okay, they're not going to hear you. Like, they're going to just hear you yelling at them. They're not going to consider anything you say. And it's kind of like that. Like Paul said, I become all things to all men. For the gospel's sake, meaning he's like, he will adjust himself. When he's with the Jews, he would speak a certain way. When he's with the Gentiles, he would speak a certain way. Like, you have to learn to adjust, and you can't be prideful. Just know that if you're feeling frustrated and feeling like, I shouldn't have to change, I shouldn't have to adjust, I shouldn't have to accommodate. It's not my job to accommodate. It's not my job to change. It's not my job. Well, that's a problem, because someone at some point is going to have to adjust. And it's either one or the other. It's you or your person you're dealing with. Like, somebody has to adjust. Either they need to mature up, which is less likely, or you need to reduce it down for them, which is more likely. And you being the bigger person is the responsibility of love is to be like, okay, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to bite the bullet and I'm going to do it. I'm going to do the right thing for the right reasons. And I'm going to let frustration go, because frustration is not a fruit of the Spirit.
Yeah. Amen. Yeah. That's really great. And I'm not going to belabor anything else, though. I'm just going to say that's awesome. Ruminate on all those things that Rachel said. And, we hope that you enjoy our Rhema episodes, that you enjoy these kind of like off topic, just one-offs. If you do, we would love, to hit that like button. If you're still here, drop us a comment, or subscribe to our channel. If you're new, or if you haven't subscribed yet, I can't even tell you how many things I've watched on YouTube and I'm like, why haven't I seen so-and-so's video? It's because I'm not subscribed. So just check. We love you guys. We'd love to have you around, be a part of the family here at the Sevenfold.
Yeah. So right now, I just pray over all of you that your eyes would be open, that you would have clear hearing and clear sight, and that the love of God would be able to pour over you in a new way this week.
Amen. Yeah.
As you yield this area up to the Lord. Thank you guys. We love you. Have a wonderful week.
And we'll see you next time.
Yep.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.